Hi everyone, my name is Courtney. I write under the pen names Lyra Parish and I'm one half of the USA Today Bestselling duo Kennedy Fox. Today we're going to talk about the USA Today Bestseller list. I was getting a lot of common questions in my Q&A Mondays about USA Today. Real quick before we get started, today I am drinking coconut cocoa tea. Here is my mug of the day. Sips by sends me a box on a monthly basis. Thank you very much. And I'll show a little clip of the Galentine's Day box. I love coconut and I love cocoa, and so the mixture of this tea together is just really good. It's so hot right now. I don't know if you can see it steaming, but I want to drink. I want to drink the whole. I've had some nasty teas, I'm not gonna lie to you, but this one is actually very, very tasty. So thank you, Sips By. If y'all are interested in getting a tea box, I got a link right down below. But let's get started with this video. I'm going to read out all the questions and then I'm going to break them down. They're all questions from author tubers, from Brooke, Meg, and Bethany. So it's gonna take me a whole video. First one comes from Brooke and it says, what paths did you and Brooke take to make This Is War your first book together such a success when it was first published? What strategies can a newbie author make in order for their debut book to sell from the get-go? Meg says, I'd love to hear about your experience hitting USA Today. First, a huge congrats on your accomplishment. Did you use any particular strategies to reach the list, such as releasing in a certain season, on a particular day, ad stacking, etc.? If so, do you think any of those strategies would still work today? And then Bethany says, this was a comment on a video, but it kind of looped into that. It says, this is so motivating. I love that you share so much, and so honestly, it inspires me like crazy. When you talked about USA Today and making the list with your series in the future, I got super curious to ask if it's more normal to make the list with the first book in a series or if it's the newest release that makes the list. Small question, but I'm so curious about the strategy behind series releases. It's a lot to unpack. So with those questions being asked, I think it's important that we break it down from the very beginning, which means I need to give y'all a little bit of backstory. When me and Brooke started Kennedy Fox, we were a secret duo. Nobody knew that Brooke Cumberland and Lyra Parish were behind the pen name. We kept it under wraps, which means we did not have the contacts that we originally had when we were publishing under our names. And me and Brooke at that point were still kind of publishing. I know early 2016 I had released a book and so had she. We didn't publish This Is War until October of 2016. That will be kind of important later. But we didn't tell anybody who we were. We created all of our social media and all of those things beforehand. I believe it was in May or June when we started really setting the foundation for our brand and what we were going to bring people. And even though we were secret, people knew that whoever was behind this pen name was not a new author. Me and Brooke had already made plenty of mistakes under our own names, different things that we knew when we started Kennedy Fox. We did not want to go down that path. Instead of starting at level 0, as most new authors did, Kennedy Fox started at like a level 8 out of 10 because we previously had experience publishing. So I can't say that, oh, we were newbie authors when we released that and it just did well. That's not the case. There was experience behind it, and I think that is one of the main things that sets Kennedy Fox apart from someone who is a debut today, because we knew what we were doing. That's the bottom line. We also knew what tropes sold for romance. We started branding right from the very beginning. We had the Kennedy Fox logo. All of our teasers looked exactly the same. And Brooke did a lot of groundwork trying to build our blogger list before we released. It wasn't like we just released a book and it was an instant success. It took a lot of work from June all the way until October when we released that first book. Because we were secret, we couldn't use any of our bloggers that we had previously built relationships with. We did send out an email and say, hey guys, we promise that we didn't steal your email from anyone. You were on our newsletter. You have read our previous books, but we are a secret pen name of authors and we would like to know if you'd like to read this book ahead of time and get an advanced review copy. Some people were like, yes, I would love that. I love this idea. Can't wait to find out who you guys are. And other people were very rude about it. They were like, I am not going to read a book by someone that I don't know because I could not like you. Some people were drama queens about it. And so we did have a smaller blogger list and we did use Instagram a lot. It was one of the main platforms that Kennedy Fox used to launch the book. That was studying hashtags, that was finding book bloggers who had read books that were like ours or who had read our previous books and just reaching out to them and sending them personalized individual notes. We had our blog set up, our website was ready, we had a newsletter from the get-go. We had checked every single box of how to have a successful release, which means when we did release, we were at a much higher level than most debut authors are. The cover was on brand and it was a very high quality. We had used an exclusive image and we had a book that had a hard cliffhanger. And I'm talking about this cliffhanger leaves people with a racing heart. Also, our blurb was really catchy for 2016. I mean, we're always like changing stuff now. We had the perfect package: the branding, the book, the blurb, the story, and the hook. We had all of it. We used a trope that sells really well in romance, and we had a book that had a very strong hook at the end that made people want to one-click that second book. When we released, it was crazy because the way that it released is it shot up, and then we sold more books, and then we sold more books, and usually after a week with release, even to this day, you'll see this type of thing when you release a book. You'll climb up the mountain, and then you'll go to the other side, and then it will level out. With This Is War, it was never like that. It was constantly climbing, and then it would level off, then it would climb more, and then it would level off, then it would climb more, and then it would drop, and then it would climb more. And so we knew that we had a really good story that people loved. Even still to this day, that series for us sells a lot of books. People still love it. It is old at this point. It will be 5 years old come October, which is, in my opinion, an old book. It was the very first book that we ever released. Meg had asked if there was a specific time period. There wasn't. We knew that we didn't want to release around the holidays, like right before Thanksgiving is typically bad, right around Christmas is typically bad, New Year's is typically bombarded with tons of releases. So we knew that we wanted to hit it before that point. And so October seemed like a perfect time period, the very beginning of October, and we knew that we wanted to release the second book fairly quickly. This will all come into play. We released the first book. It was like an instant success. We made a lot of money on the first book, and it didn't immediately make USA Today. People always assume that that book made USA Today out of the gate. It did, but it was not when it first released. We knew that the book was great, and so we had pre-orders set up for the second book right when the first book released. So they had 2 months to read the first book in between. Because our sales did so well, we were like, you know what? Let's take a risk. Let's apply for a BookBub and let's do some ad stacking on this and some other newsletters or whatever the case is. And let's mark the book down to 99 cents. So maybe we can get more people to read it, so then more people will pre-order book 2. That is one thing that most experienced authors will be like, do not mark your book down on sale after 2 months when you haven't released the second book. This is your very first book. We didn't care. We just wanted people to read it because we knew, based on how it had already sold in the first 6 weeks, that people would more than likely click for the second book. So we put the book on sale for 99 cents. It sold like hotcakes, and that's when the book actually made USA Today. That's like, wow, did we make it? Did we actually launch a successful pen name? And we knew at that point that we had. Continuing on, the third book, which released a few months later, and the fourth book, those both made USA Today as well, because This Is Love has a mini cliffhanger which leads you to the next characters that were interconnected in the first 2 books. So people wanted their story too. We are really good about leading people to the next book, and I think most of our readers would tell you that. You know, Kennedy Fox, they will say that a book is complete, and that couple is actually complete, but they will always put something in that epilogue that makes you want to know what happens to the other people that you have already been introduced to. And I think that's the reason why our duets and why our series, even our standalone series, do so well. It's a strategy that we use in basically every book we release. We don't even care if it's a standalone. You will learn about whose book is coming next at the end of every single one of our books. Having the links for someone to click immediately when they are done reading your book is so important, guys, especially if you're wide, especially if you have pre-orders. I know there are Kindle Unlimited authors that use a different strategy, who just live release, which means the day that your book releases, you press publish, you wait for Amazon to do their thing, and then it's live. Live releases did not work for us. They never worked for us. We always had a pre-order, even if it was a very short one on Amazon. So going back to Brooke's question that she asked, I believe that when you release your first book, you need to make sure that it is the best possible product, because that's what it is, that it can possibly be. I mean, your cover needs to be on brand with what is selling on Amazon and Apple today, not 6 years ago, not even 2 years ago. You need to study your genre for today, and you need to do thumbnail tests. You need to put that book in a square along with other thumbnails of covers that are selling really well, and you need to look at it with a critical eye and say, would this book fit in on a shelf with all these other books that are currently selling like crazy? And if the answer is no, then you're off the mark. Readers have a specific expectation when it comes to genre. They have a very high expectation when it comes to covers. If we were selling a contemporary romance book that just had a house in a dark cover, people wouldn't know what to expect. We're sending mixed signals about the book. So you have to be very clear with your genre, and you have to be able to fit in, but also be competitive. I think if you're releasing a series, it's a very good idea to go ahead and have the pre-order up for the next book. There have been indie authors who have burned readers, and they just kind of don't trust people sometimes, especially authors who continuously overpromise and then underdeliver. That's one of the main issues. But when you have that pre-order up, they're like, okay, this series is actually going to be finished. I'm going to go ahead and pre-order that because I want to know. I have to know what happens next to these characters. And I know, like, when it comes to like series or standalones, you need to have some hook that will lead them to your next book. Even if it's two unrelated series. Say you complete a 6-book series or a 5-book series or whatever. In that back matter, give them a preview to that next series that you want them to jump into with a link for them to buy it. You always want to have your back matter updated and set up where you can send readers to the next one and there is no confusion where they need to go. I think to launch strong, you need to be out there on social media. And I know that that scares some of you introverts, but you have to break out of that shell. You have to be able to find people to review your books beforehand without charging them for advanced review copies. Let me say that. And it's okay if people tell you no. Don't take it to heart. People are very busy, especially authors who are established. We're under a major deadline pretty much 99% of the time. But find book blockers, search for hashtags, use Facebook groups, go on TikTok and make some videos. I mean, there's different ways for you to find readers on social media, and it's much easier today than it was 10 years ago. So you have to use it to your advantage. We had a quick release strategy. I think the longest that we waited between books was 2 months. I think maybe one of them was 2.5 months. It was really important for us to build trust with our readers. So they knew that when we said a book was going to release, it was releasing. There was no if, and buts about it. And having those pre-order links up lets people know that you're not just some new author who's testing out the waters, who's going to write a book, and if it doesn't do well, you're not going to finish a series. Because there's a lot of indies who do that, and even experienced people that I know, they'll do that too, because they're trying to find that fire in a bottle. And unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. So then they drop that pen name and they start another one. And it's really easy to get discouraged as a newbie when you release your first book. It's really easy to be like, oh, well, you know, so-and-so released this many books and so-and-so made top 500 and so-and-so. It doesn't matter. You have to stay in your lane and you have to look at yourself. Usually people don't make USA Today like that. It was a unicorn moment. We had something that was very special that people really loved and still love to this day. As a debut, someone who doesn't have experience, I think it's kind of hard to do that. I mean, Brooke had written 14 books beforehand and I had published 8, but I had written 10. We knew who we were as writers. We had written a lot of words beforehand. And sometimes when you're a new author, you have to make the mistakes and you have to learn from them. Meg asked if there was a certain season. No, it's just we decided in the summer that we were going to write together, and we finished the book and had it edited and everything, and that was the earliest date that we could do it. We did release on a Tuesday because the way that the USA Today list, it runs Monday through Sunday. So when you release on a Tuesday, it goes by time zones. So you'll have some of your pre-orders go back and post on Monday, and then you'll have others post on Tuesday. And then of course you have your sales for the rest of the week. So if you are trying to make a list, it's best to release on Tuesday. It's why traditional publishers do it as well. Tuesday is the day if you want to make USA Today, unless you are some unicorn like Vi Keeland, you can release on a Sunday and still make USA Today because she just sells so many many books. Most authors are not like that, and Kennedy Fox is not like that. Spoiler alert, we have not made USA Today since those first 4 books. After we released the Checkmate Duet series, we went into Kindle Unlimited for 14 months, which almost killed our career. It's something that I talk about a lot. I personally hate Kindle Unlimited. It does not work for our Kennedy Fox brand. It works for a lot of people that I know. It's just a very stressful thing. When you are in KU, it's very difficult to make USA Today. It's not impossible. I did find out a workaround within the last 6 months, which be in KU and sell a lot of hardcovers through Ingram Spark. I think you have to sell a minimum of 500 hardcovers or paperbacks through Ingram Spark and have a lot of sales on Amazon. That counts too. But for the most part, I know a lot of people don't use Ingram if they're in KU. They just use Amazon for everything because it's easier. You've got one distribution center to run with. We were in KU. We were not using Ingram at that point. We didn't really qualify to make USA Today. We released an entire series plus some. We got out of the program in May or June of 2019. We spent the rest of 2019 trying to rebuild our audience on Apple. We spent all of 2020 trying to rebuild our audience wide on Google Play, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, and of course Apple and Amazon to try to get our pre-orders up. And we've done a really good job, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. When we entered Kindle Unlimited, we did ourselves a disservice and we basically had to start from ground zero going wide. We're now at a point where we are building that up, and so I expect that we will make USA Today at some point in 2021. I know that our pre-orders are currently climbing, but you never know. Some weeks you have to sell over 5,000 copies in a week only in the US stores, and then other weeks it's 6,000. It's dependent on how many books everyone else is selling. It's a goal, of course, but it's not something that we're gonna kill ourselves to do. We are trying to grow our readership, and that's our number one. We work on our backlist a lot, so if it happens, cool. If it doesn't, that's totally okay too, because we've already got our letters. Bethany said she was curious if it's normal to make the list with the first book in a series or the newest release, and I think that it kind of depends on where you are in your career. I know people who have a huge backlist and they can make USA Today on the very first book in their new series that they are releasing because they have a built-up readership, because they have a very large backlist, because they've been publishing for a few years. So that happens too. I found with newer authors that if you have a strong hook at the beginning of all of your books and you bring people through your series, the very final book of the series tends to do really well as long as you can hook them through, because at that point you have people's imaginations engaged. They have to know what happens. They have to finish the series. So I see a lot of people who release 1, 2, 3 books, and then the 4th book will hit USA Today or the 5th book will hit USA Today because they really grab those readers and they have a very good read through. Also, typically, people who are making USA Today, they have pre-order set up. They've got it set up for a long time, which allows people to read through that series because, of course, you're always trying to use that first book as a reader magnet, as a loss leader to lead people through your series. So I think it just kind of depends. I see people do it on the first book. I see people do it on the 4th book, but not on the 5th book, but then they'll do it on the 6th book. I think it really depends on your package. It depends on where you are in your writing career, and it also depends on the hooks that you have to lead your readers through your series. Making USA Today, I never expected it. It was always like a bucket list thing. It was a wish list thing, but it's not something that I ever expected. Brooke called me at work and told me, and I was just like shocked. I remember sitting in my office with the door closed, thinking that there was some sort of emergency because I don't talk on the phone and she doesn't ever call me at work. And I just sat there like, you're joking, right? Like this is a cruel joke. And she's like, no, I'm serious. It was an amazing thing. And I think at that point, we knew that we worked really well together and that Kennedy Fox was going to be a success. And here we are nearly 5 years later, and that is true. And I think it really boils down to me and Brooke's working relationship, how we write together, how we are very hard on each other when it comes to our words and our chapters, and how we have a built-in beta reader system with each other in our work. So we know that it's going to be to a high quality, and she holds me to a high standard just as I hold her to a high standard. That's something that you want to do. It's absolutely possible as a self-published author. I do believe you need pre-order. I do believe you need to be pushing those links, and always look for new readers. Use social media. Make sure that you're emailing your newsletter and you're taking advantage of that, and you're constantly trying to build that. It's a cool thing. I'm not gonna lie. It's a pretty cool thing, and I hope that in 2021 we're able to do that again. And of course, I will share that excitement with you if it happens. But like I said, even if you don't ever make a list, it doesn't matter. I know people who make over $1 million in a year and they've never made USA Today. If you ask me if I would rather make $1 million or make USA Today, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say I'd rather make $1 million than have those letters. And I think that if you keep pushing, it will eventually happen, but don't let that make you feel less than or discredit you because you don't have those letters, because like I said, you can make a lot of money without ever making a list. A lot of money. And I want to name drop her right here, but I'm not gonna do that because, you know, I don't want to talk about other people's finances. Anyway, that's all I have today. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you have any questions about USA Today or anything like that with bestseller lists, please feel free to leave it down below. And yeah, I appreciate that y'all are here. I hope that y'all have an amazing, incredible week. You accomplish all your goals and you write all the words, and I'll see you again in my next video. Bye guys.